Hi, our Bible reading is taken from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 5 to 10. For what we preach is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, "Let the light shine out of darkness," made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. But we have treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. So, growing up in the Salvation Army, it was pressed on me what an amazing man William Booth was. He was charismatic. He knew how to attract a crowd. He cared for the poor and the marginalised. Growing up, I had a great admiration for this man, but the more I read about him, the more I learned. I came to realise that most of what he did was to tell others what to do, and they did it. The more I learn about William Booth, the more I realised that I probably wouldn't have got on with him. Probably the bossing everyone around might have got on my nerves a little bit. But yet, here we are, 155 years later, still able to bring the love of Christ and his salvation for us all to our world, because he and those around him were obedient. William Booth is an example of the light of Christ being in a jar of clay, an ordinary Victorian family who struggled to survive daily with very little money, and they, along with others, have left us this legacy. Now, when I was a child, there was a man that I knew in my corps called Uncle Charlie. He lived in a bedsit in a cul-de-sac where lots of other elderly folk in the corps lived. Whenever you asked him if he was all right, he would say, "All right. There's only one man who is all right, and that was Jesus." Uncle Charlie lived his life believing that Jesus would come again in his lifetime. There's also Auntie Violet, who lived in this close. And I remember Auntie Violet mostly for her jingly earrings, because I was fascinated by how they moved when her head shook. Auntie Violet was a small lady who was at everything at the corps, helping Auntie Isabel with the teas. She was quiet and unassuming, but she was also one of the treasures of the corps. And then there was also Uncle Harry, who tried to teach me to play the cornet in his kitchen when I was about 8 years old. And I wonder what Uncle Charlie, Auntie Violet, and Uncle Harry would make of me now. Me, who was the naughty child, who was always being taken out of the meeting to get a smack because I wouldn't be quiet. All these people went to glory a long time ago, and yet their legacy and their treasure lived on. Verse 5 says, "For what we preach is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake." These people that I've mentioned showed this in their quiet lives. They loved me, the noisy child, because I needed to see God's love, whether they realised that that's what they were doing when they were interacting with me or not. Our actions should always point away from ourselves and point to Jesus, who is our example. Now, when Paul was writing his letter to the people of Corinth, he was writing to a people who valued self-sufficiency, wealth, showing off their accomplishments and possessions. The culture was openly materialistic, and so they struggled with Paul, who wasn't like that. A commentary that I read on this says many in the church have come to believe that Paul simply suffers too much personally, and that he is too weak and unimpressive in his public manner to be a spirit-filled apostle. That sounds similar to our culture today, doesn't it? There are even the celebrity preachers around who always look so well to get put together. And then there's me. And so it was into this that Paul said, "For we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body." Following Jesus isn't going to give you wealth. It may well not give you position of good standing. It might not even earn you respect. but you will possess treasure worth far more than anything that this world can offer to you. God chose ordinary people despite knowing that we would mess things up occasionally. I was watching a video this week that showed us a conversation between J. John and his associate pastor. They were talking about how amazing it is that God chooses us and delights in us. They used the analogy of the associate pastor and his 4-year-old son washing their family car together and doing a great. The little boy was delighted, thinking that he was washing the car and doing a great job. And yet it was the dad who was doing the actual job of washing the car, cleaning the parts the boy couldn't reach. Despite this, the dad let the boy think that he'd washed the car. This is how it is with us and God. We do our little bit, thinking that we're helping people or whatever it is. And God is working hard behind the scenes doing the actual work because we're not able to. He delights in our ordinariness and weaknesses because they remind us that we need him. Psalm 23 says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." This, my friends, is contentment. This is the treasure that we possess in our ordinary bodies. When we fully know the reality of these words, we recognize the treasure, and we possess the pearl of greatest price.